2020 and 2022, a significant migration wave happened here in Idaho when we saw thousands of Californians pack up and move into our state, fueled by the pandemic and with so many people suddenly having the option to work remotely and from wherever they chose to call home, and then add to that Idaho's promise of more affordable living. Well, for many, the Gem State just pretty much looked like the perfect escape from the Golden State's high cost of living, overbearing regulations, and just all around crazy fast pace. However, now that the dust has settled and the newness of Idaho has worn off, well, something interesting is starting to happen. We are starting to see some Californians who relocated here back during the insanity that was 2020 to 2022 pack up and move back to the state that they fled from. So what gives? What's really behind this reverse migration of sorts? In today's video, we are going to share some of the main reasons we've been hearing from people who are leaving Idaho to head back to their home state. But before I go on, let me just cover something really quickly. There are still plenty of people moving to Idaho. There isn't a gigantic group of people fleeing Idaho by any means. But over the past several months, we have had some former Californians turned Idahoans make the decision to pack up and move back to their home state. And moving isn't easy. So I want to share what we've been hearing from them so you don't find yourself in the same predicament. And hey, before I dive into all of these reasons, I really want to hear from you. If you're moving out of Idaho and headed to another state, or even if you're just considering it, chime in, post a comment below. I really want to hear your reasons, and I know other viewers will too. Okay, so one of the biggest appeals of moving to Idaho during the pandemic was just how affordable our housing was in comparison to California. During that time, many Californians sold homes at a premium and were, of course, thrilled to discover how much further their money stretched here in Idaho's housing market. But, well, due to that huge uptick in demand we saw, which was not met by a huge increase in inventory, i.e. we did not see more homes hit the market to match the demand that we were seeing. During that time, we were told repeatedly by locals how much they'd love to sell, but then where were they gonna go? No one wanted to leave Idaho. I mean, yeah, selling their home at a premium, of course, sounded ideal at first glance, but then usually with further thought and consideration, well, the question pretty much became, but then where would I go? What would I do? So anyhow, not as many existing homeowners sold their homes during that time that we would have needed to see to keep home prices from escalating. So in a nutshell, due to basic supply and demand, we saw our housing prices here skyrocket. In fact, in just Idaho's capital city of Boise alone, home prices between the end of 2019 and the beginning of 2023 skyrocketed by an astonishing 61%. The average home price went from being right around $370,000 at the end of 2019 up to about $605,000 by the end of 2022. So yeah, a 61% increase. That's quite the jump.
I would say so, yeah.
So for some, the dream of affordable housing here in Idaho quickly morphed into a harsh reality. The rapid rise in housing prices, paired with the inflation we've seen and the now high mortgage rates, well, it's made it pretty difficult for some new Idaho residents to achieve the financial freedom that they really thought that they'd find here. That said, what about all of the other factors that go into our overall cost of living? So utility bills, property taxes, grocery costs, all of those things. Are they additional factors that are pushing people out of Idaho and back to their original states? No, not at all. When it comes to the overall cost of living here, Idaho is still killing it over California. But, well, our housing costs have gone up, and for some, well, they've gone up too much for it to make sense for their situation and really preference. Now, let's talk about some of the motivating factors for many Californians who panic bought back in the 2020 to 2022 environment. For a number of them, well, they just wanted to get the heck out of Dodge and really might not have taken the time to clearly think things through when it comes to Idaho's political environment and really our social climate here. And sometimes even those who thought that they had a handle on things and were initially drawn to Idaho due to our state's conservative values, lower taxes, and less restrictive regulations, and our small government stance, well, once some of them settled in, they found that our political landscape was more complex and some would likely even say more severe than they anticipated. And yeah, the differences in political climate created tensions for certain newcomers who had hoped for a middle ground, but instead found the contrast to just be too stark. In California, there is a certain level of political homogeneity in more progressive cities, with social and political values that align with much of the population. And for some transplants, the deep-rooted conservatism we have here in Idaho has clashed with their personal beliefs, ultimately leading them to make the decision to return to California, a state where they feel more aligned with. Interestingly, well, across the board, the Californians who are now calling us right now, so in today's climate and being a political year, well, their motivating factors and reasons for considering relocating here are notably different than those who were calling us back during the pandemic. And what I mean by that is that their motivating factors today are, well, just a bit more well thought out and albeit direct. So before I get any wave of angry comments from COVID-era relocators, please note that I'm not saying that everyone who moved here during the COVID market didn't think things through. That's not my point at all. I am just saying that the unknowns and insanity during that time was, well, just different in many ways to today's environment, which, well, yeah, we still have a lot of unknowns and certainly some insanity nearing the end of 2024, and don't we? But it's also different, and as such is across the board being handled and thought through in a very different manner by those who are calling us up now to discuss a possible move to Idaho.
Okay, so you've thought this through.
Okay, so now on a similar but different vein, for some Californians, adjusting to Idaho's culture and pace was more challenging than they anticipated. Idaho has a unique, tight-knit community culture with deeply rooted traditions and values that can sometimes contrast with the more progressive and diverse lifestyle that many Californians were accustomed to. The rural setting that initially felt so refreshing became, for some, well, a bit isolating. And then when people began to return to in-office work, social dynamics in urban centers like San Francisco and Los Angeles started to reopen, making California's vibrant culture scene once again appealing to those who miss the city's vibe and energy and just overall diversity. And for some Idaho transplants, the excitement of California's eclectic lifestyle outweighs the slower, quieter pace that we have living here in Idaho.
Bye, Felicia!
While remote work initially allowed for the flexibility to live in a different state, the post-pandemic world saw many companies calling employees back to the office or setting up hybrid arrangements. And while Idaho's job market is still very limited in comparison to California's extensive range of opportunities in the tech, entertainment, finance, and innovation worlds. And, well, our salaries here in Idaho, compared to California's, tend to be a bit lower. So for those seeking career advancements in certain fields or higher salaries, Idaho's options have felt, to some, as being just, well, rather limited. So I want to ask you, how important is our job market here to you? And I ask because almost all of the Californians turned Idahoans who we know who are now contemplating returning to California and who are not, of course, retirees, have told us that our, in comparison to California's less dynamic job market, has been a huge motivating factor and pull. So please take 2 seconds to post a comment or let me and other viewers know your thoughts. The surge of new residents that we saw during the pandemic put immense pressure on our state's infrastructure. And of course, that was especially felt in the cities where we saw the biggest population surges, such as Boise, Meridian, and Coeur d'Alene. Just straight out, we were not ready for it, and our cities across the board really just didn't jump quickly enough. From congested roads to overburdened schools to just overstrained local services, there is no denying that we are experiencing some growing pains here across Idaho. So for some newcomers, the congestion and strain on infrastructure was surprising, as many left California partly to escape overcrowding, only to find what some deem to be somewhat similar problems here in Idaho, with California's infrastructure being better able to accommodate its population, well, which is debatable, but again, I'm just relaying what we've heard. Anyhow, many have decided that the advantages of life in Idaho were no longer as compelling. With that all said, I do want to push pause here really quickly and share a quick observation with you. Over the past month, we have had the opportunity to tour 16 relocation couples around the valley who are thinking about possibly moving here from California. And all of them but one have pretty much laughed in our faces, in a polite way, of course, because our clients are the best, but they've just pretty much rolled their eyes and laughed when they see our version of what we deem to be horrific traffic. It's all relative, right? And again, in this video, I'm just sharing with you what we have heard from people both moving out of Idaho as well as what we're hearing from those who are relocating into Idaho. It's all about balance, right? Now, while Idaho, of course, boasts beautiful landscapes and abundant outdoor recreation, well, we have 4 distinct seasons. And for some, and depending on where they moved here from in California, California's year-round milder and, well, just warmer weather was missed. Some who relocated to Idaho have found that our winters are just more harsh than they were up for, especially those who were used to and loved the more mild and reliably warmer weather in places such as San Diego and Los Angeles. And well, if you moved to Idaho and moved up to the northern end of Idaho and you don't like snow,
good luck with that.
And then yes, Idaho is of course landlocked. We've got gorgeous lakes, rivers, and of course mountain ranges and miles of beautiful wilderness to explore, but no, we obviously do not have the beach. And well, some former Californians have found that they miss surfing, beach days, and their uniquely warm winters. So if you are contemplating making the move here, please be sure to take a beat to really think all of these things through, because for some, having easy access to the ocean can really impact your overall quality of life. And contrary to what many tend to believe about real estate agents, I have zero interest in having people go through all of the stress and everything that goes into moving to another state, only to find that it is not a good fit.
We're not all about it.
Just last week, we were out with some clients who are currently considering moving here from another state. And at the very end of our day together, and after we'd driven all over the valley and toured multiple homes, the husband turned to us and said that his experience with us that day had single-handedly changed his opinion on realtors, which while I hate that the real estate industry has such a, well, just a bit of a bad rep, well, I certainly appreciated the sentiment.
Yeah, not bad. Not bad at all.
And then, of course, the last reason, and this one is a big one, at the heart of many return journeys is the pull of family, friends, and just familiarity. Moving to a new state can be an exciting adventure, but it can also bring a sense of distance from loved ones and social circles that have been built over a lifetime. So for some, the initial draw of a quieter, simpler life here in Idaho couldn't outweigh the longing for what they still deem to be home. And that feeling became increasingly apparent to some after California started to reopen after the pandemic. For some former Californians turned Idahoans who are now considering going back to California, the pull of family and friends is their biggest motivating factor. And fair enough, relationships of course matter, and more often than not are the true mark of what makes a place feel like a home. That was cheesy, huh? Yeah, pretty cheesy, but oh well, let's just keep going with it. So to wrap this one up, the migration of Californians to Idaho during the pandemic era captured a crazy moment in time, a response to the pressures and changes brought on by a global event. But as life returned to the new normal, some have decided that while Idaho has undeniable appeal, it also has brought on some challenges, well, that they just hadn't anticipated. From my perspective, this reverse migration trend highlights the importance of lifestyle compatibility, long-term stability, and the resilience of emotional connections. For some, Idaho was the dream escape they'd hoped for, and they found a new home here. For others, the journey has underscored what they truly value, pulling them back to the state that they, well, once thought that they had left behind for good. So what do you think? Are you someone who moved here from another state who's now considering moving back? Or maybe you're on the other side of the coin and are contemplating packing up and moving into Idaho. Let me know in the comment section below. And if you found this video helpful, please consider hitting that little like or subscribe button. Both really do help us to grow our channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.